All right, hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Chase Thomas Podcast, where I'm still the aforementioned Chase Thomas, coming to you live from Knoxville, Tennessee. Everything School HQ. My mom's actually giving me grief tonight, Matt Green, in my Instagram DMs. She sent me a picture of Saturday Down South putting and all the different accolades of Alabama right now, where you made the joke last week about Everything School.
I've tried to prepare you. This was going to happen.
But here's the issue. Like, yeah, Bama's going to go in probably number one seed in the NCAA tournament. The basketball stuff, like, good basketball program on the court. Football program, obviously, right there. Baseball, though, they're undefeated. They're basically the 9th, maybe 10th best team in the SEC this year. Like, Tennessee is just mowing over everybody. Like, LSU is just an absolute juggernaut. LSU is just otherworldly. Like, LSU is going to be what Tennessee was last year. As a whole, they are quite good. Ole Miss is good, but like, Everything School HQ still requires you to be elite in all three sports. And when Mom said that, I was like, it's weak sauce. They're still not an elite baseball program, not even close to an elite baseball program. Their starting third baseman is now the starting third baseman for my Tennessee Volunteers, who I watched on Sunday afternoon in a beautiful game with my wife, where they also kicked the crap out of the Gonzaga Bulldogs on Sunday. A beautiful day here in Knoxville. But so look, they can say Everything's cool. You can start making the jokes that they're taking over that moniker. Women's softball now in the top 5 in the country. The basketball program, the Lady Vols got to the SEC title game for the women's group and lost to South Carolina, but got to the SEC title. Stegman's falling apart. I mean, I don't even know if they're going to have a baseball or a basketball arena for the Dogs next year. The baseball team's not good. Once again, undefeated, same kind of mirage for Bama, where they're probably 11th or 12th best baseball program in the SEC this year.
See, when you talk Everything School, it's like, where do you draw the line? It's like, I don't hear women's gymnastics getting any love, you know? Like, I don't hear, don't sleep on the gym dogs now. You know, that was a dynasty back in the day. So if it's like you cut it off at football, basketball, baseball.
I didn't cut it off. I said Lady Vols in softball, Lady Vols in basketball.
That was the initial. But yeah, it's like, it all counts, you know. So
cross country, track. What do you want? Tennessee's got it. Everything School HQ. Matt Green.
But basketball and football are definitely the kings in terms of just.
Well, they're the revenue sports.
Exactly. So when you're good in those two, it basically feels like everything. And so right now, Alabama. Obviously, this year they weren't, what they usually are, but they're still the gold standard of college football. And are they currently ranked number 1, Alabama? Or are they like number 4 right now? They're like top 5,
Houston's
right?
number 1. UCLA, I think, is 2. I think they're 4 or 5, something like that. But they're going to be a 1
so
seed if
you're right there, top 5 in basketball and football. That's the elite of the elite. Tennessee, obviously, what did they finish? 6, 7 in the rankings in college football? Where'd they?
7? I think it was 7.
And then, what are they? They just lost last week, right? So they were like 12, 15 or something. So they're
5th in KenPom. 5th in KenPom.
Yeah, they're way up there. They're doing the same type
Baseball
of thing.
number
but
3.
Obviously, this is a 1-year thing in football. They have not been the gold standard program for years like they once were. So. It's Alabama. I was trying to prepare you for this because Alabama, this team's got a legit shot to win it all, and I can just see it. I can see the Everything School, and then it's probably Nick Saban's probably going to somehow get credit for the Bama. Saban really established the standard at Alabama, and the basketball team followed. It's going to be something like that. But yeah, I prepare yourself, sir.
Well, speaking of Saban, I think that's where we should start here because I like Nick Saban. I think a lot of people, like Tennessee fans, Georgia fans, I think there are a lot of people who don't like Nick Saban. I like him by and large. I think one of the dumber things I see when it comes to Nick Saban, the commentary surrounding him. So this week, Saban said some stuff. He was talking about NIL, all kinds of stuff, and Ross Dellinger's really good piece on SA.com about all this kind of stuff. Tennessee fans specifically had a lot of fun with the quote. When a team can snap the ball within 7 seconds of the play clock, is that really good for player safety? So a lot of Tennessee fans ran with that of like, oh, after Tennessee beats Alabama, Saban makes a comment about if this is really like this is something that we need to look at in terms of player safety is the 7 seconds or less thing. But what I look at with this group and what they were dunking on, because Saban said, quote, guys are going to school where they can make the most money. Okay, folks. Nick Saban can say things like with what he said last year at Texas A&M or what he has said about NIL. There is not I can't believe I had to like say this in this program, but it seems like on Twitter and just when you have conversations with folks who are college football fans who despise Nick Saban or just any of these kind of arguments where it's like, oh, Nick Saban, that's rich. He's the one complaining about NIL or he's the one complaining about X, Y, and Z. Nick Saban is giving his thoughts, and Nick Saban is someone who could dislike something or dislike the direction of where something is going, but that doesn't mean he is not going to partake to ensure that his team is still the best team in college football. People were posting, oh, they had the number 1 recruiting class this past year and one of the best of all time. So why are you complaining? Folks, you can complain and be like, I don't like how this is all going about. Like, I don't like, what was that story about the law? Like one kid wanted to get his girlfriend or something into law school, part of the deal. I forgot what that was. That feels like forever ago, but that was like a month ago with some player who transferred out.
Where he basically said that, admitted to them turning down some sort of pay for play type of thing. Like that's not their style. Right. Along those lines.
And it's like, yeah, I still don't think Nick Saban needs NIL to like the money to come up to get a lot of these kids. I think his draft resume and just his football acumen and the history of Nick Saban in Alabama is probably good enough to get most kids and most families on board with playing for the University of Alabama as long as Nick Saban's coaching him. He complained about the offensive changes to the spread, to this pace. He has done that. Like, it's not the football that he grew up with. He would still probably prefer to play the style that was the case 20 years ago. But that doesn't mean he's not going to go out and hire Lane Kiffin. That doesn't mean he's not going to go out and adapt. So you can not like something, or you could be like, I don't like where this is going. I don't like and still realize you have to do those things to continue to thrive and to continue to win at the highest level in the sport. So I never understood why people give Saban grief about stuff like that when he airs his own grievances about his personal preferences or his direction of sport, because obviously his voice matters. He's the most important football voice in the sport, has been for 20 plus years now. And look, I mean, you're not always going to agree with him, but I don't know. I think Nick Saban gets a lot of flack and it's unwarranted.
See, that's where I disagree. I feel like what he says is like gospel. Like, it's like, oh, well, Saban said this, so it's obviously factual. Like, I think he gets like too much leeway to the point of it's like every time something goes against him at this point, and only recently. And I don't dislike Nick Saban at all, honestly. Like, there's people that kind of insinuated how the Alabama rose to their success with car dealerships and stuff like that, and it's like, I've never really gotten into anything like that. I think they're doing anything that anybody is going to do to try to get ahead, right? But when he says things recently, it feels more and more like complaining. Like, who is not making the decision, like their life decisions, based on how it's going to benefit them financially? Like, literally every single person on your coaching staff is doing that. They're taking incremental raises along the way to go from a quality control coach to a secondary coach, to a potential coordinator, a head coach. It's like everyone is trying to get as much money possible. Like, that's the way the system is set up right now. Like, the players, yeah, some of them love the major and have, a great academic, ambitions, but a lot of them see the players at Florida State at my position did X, Y, and Z at the next level and got paid. So to get paid, I need to go to Florida State and be a cornerback or whatever, where they have a history of producing guys that go professional and get paid. So it's like now they can get paid in college. So like they're always making a financial decision. It's just like you're somehow bothered by it, I guess, because it's happening while they're in college.
No, he's not bothered by that. Like, that's what he was saying. He was like, it was for guys to, it was like a motivation to like make it work in college, and then you get rewarded while in college for being a star, is basically what the idea was just that, like, you don't go into college with NIL deals. You get NIL deals once you're there and you've put in the work and you're a star at that university. That was what he was getting at. My interpretation. With a lot of
He's
okay with it. Yeah. He doesn't like a 17-year-old kid or whatever coming in and just being like, here's what this school is offering me NIL wise. And it's like, all right, man, like, I'm Nick Saban in Alabama. What's happening here?
And I can definitely understand why a head coach would not like something like that, because that's an element of the recruiting process that's just completely out of his control. It's like you can't control the academics at your college and the campus atmosphere or whatever, the location. There's certain things you can't control. But usually your position coaches, your whatever your program is enough to recruit itself. And so this money aspect being thrown in is obviously making his job more difficult. But
you also just don't know what's true and what's not. And I think that's another part of it. It's just like there's no legislation. It's all the Wild Wild West. Different states have different rules. So it's like you don't even know what's true and what's not when it's coming to you with a lot of situations, or what kids are saying or what families are saying or like anything like that, or what other coaches or what other teams are saying to these kids. Like, you just don't know. There's just so much misinformation that I think if you ask Kirby, I don't think Kirby, who is a longtime Saban lieutenant, is loving the direction of the sport. Like, Dabo's talked openly about it, and I think a lot of them too, what they dislike the most, it seems like, is that they don't have a voice in the matter, where it's like they're not at the table to help decide. And like, for like the thing you and I talk about, the calendar, like, how are all these coaches not have a seat at the table to talk about, hey, here are some issues, like, we've got to fix the calendar, you've got to work with us. I understand we're well compensated, but you're going to get more and more Todd Monkins of the world, and like get young guys retiring, young guys moving on because the calendar is so crazy. Like, I think the fact that they don't have a seat at the table and all these changes are happening and they're just supposed to adapt in the fly and keep trying to figure out what's real, like what Texas A&M's doing, where they're like, the NIL, they're like, come after us. I mean, I dare, like, we're gonna keep doing what we're doing because, like,
is this against the rules?
Yeah,
is that against the rules?
I mean, they don't care, and it's, I mean, you see at the University of Tennessee right now, like, they played by the rules with the NCAA investigation, and they still don't have an answer. Like, we still don't know how the Jeremy Pruitt and stuff is going to end, because they haven't finished it. Like, they're still working on it, and they've been compliant. Like, Kansas, look at what happened to Kansas with Bill Self. They won a national title after everything. Like, it's just, no one knows what's real. No one like, nothing is consistent, and I can only imagine for these coaches all across the board, they're just extremely frustrated with the changes, and now new rule changes too, right? Like, just different things the competition committee is going to do and change, and it's like, all right, did you at least pick the brain of Saban and Dabo and Kirby and Heupel and Chip Kelly and Lincoln Riley, and like, just go around and like include them in all of these conversations? Because that is something that would go a long way, is just figuring out a way to include these guys and include these people. Like, with NIL, with everything else, is just, they know a thing or two about how this all works. And I think you want to just get everybody on the same page. And I think that is just, it's not really complaining for Nick. I think it's just, he's frustrated with just it seems like a never ending spiral of like, what's going to change today? Or what are the rules today versus what they were yesterday?
I can definitely understand that. And the NIL stuff just has to get, more, there's got to be some uniformity to it. Also, like, what is with the rule of like the no more untimed down at the end of the first and third quarter? Like, how rare of a scenario is that to like pass a rule for? It's like, if that happens maybe once or twice a season, maybe, I don't even know. Like, that's just such a random like occurrence to pass a rule, to think like, oh, this is what's wasting time, this thing that might happen to your team one time this season. That was a weird one. But the one thing you didn't mention about Saban was the complaining about the scheduling, about the locked opponents. That's another thing that I feel like more and more these days when I hear Nick Saban talk, it's like, what are you complaining about? Like, Well, if
I mean,
if
he is getting
people
hosed a little
didn't
bit.
hear,
Tennessee being back and getting Tennessee, LSU, and Auburn as his 3 permanent ones. I mean, I understand that he's like,
But
hey,
first of all, Auburn has been mediocre as hell. Like Tennessee has been mediocre as hell. Like LSU has been one of the elite SEC programs. But like you like he's like dumbfounded on like why. Oh, I don't know why those are the teams they picked. Like you know exactly why those are the teams you picked because they're the biggest rivals you have. Like that. These are the games that college football fans want. Like it's not a mystery. And I've said it to you plenty of times, like just no one understands how this schedule is going to work. It's like every single team's schedule is going to be a gauntlet. There's no like, oh, their schedule's harder, their schedule's easier. It's like if your 3 locked opponents are easy, then your 6 rotating opponents are going to be like the best teams in the SEC every other year. It's like even Nick Saban clearly doesn't understand that either. It's like when you have LSU and Auburn and Tennessee, which honestly, that's a pretty balanced, like those are big brands. But if you're looking at all the teams that are going to have like their locked rivals, those aren't the 3 best teams in the SEC or anything. Like Auburn's going to have Alabama and Georgia 100% on their schedule. And then the years that whoever, Arkansas or Mississippi State, whoever they find, Ole Miss, whoever they find to be Auburn's 3rd rival, the years that team is also good, it's like their schedule is going to be a gauntlet. It's like Tennessee had that like unfortunate luck. It was like 4 or 5 years in a row where it was like 2008 to 2015 or so, like somewhere in that area where Tennessee was getting Alabama, obviously, from the West every year, and then just also whoever happened to be the next best team in the West, whether it was like A&M one year or like LSU in the national championship. It was like they just had a streak of just getting, and it was just bad luck. But it's like now with the schedule like being what it is, the 6 rotating opponents, the only problem we're going to ever run into is how we decide who is in the SEC championship. Some sort of 3-way, 4-way tie or something going on with teams with the same record. But like
I wonder if
the strength of schedule would just not be an issue. Everyone's going to have a gauntlet.
That's fair. And it was interesting. I was listening to the VolQuest guys talk about it, like because I don't know if you saw the Georgia and Kentucky being the permanent rival, and South Carolina and Tennessee.
I would not like Kentucky. That just doesn't make any sense for Georgia.
Well, I think, what the guys were talking about today when I was listening to it in the car was, and I hadn't considered this, is like the model might be what they're looking for is like an easy one, a medium one, and a tough one on all.
But like you're just not going to be able to do that. It's like Vanderbilt has to play somebody.
Yeah, Vanderbilt throws a lot of this up, but like the way it is,
Vanderbilt
like
screws a lot up because they have to play Tennessee. Like you know that's going to be one of them, and that's Tennessee has so many rivals that locking Vanderbilt in there. Because I was also surprised. I don't know whose it was list that you're talking about. I'm talking about
Ross
the same
Dellinger.
one.
It was Dellinger.
Okay, and he didn't have Tennessee playing Georgia, Florida, or Kentucky.
Well, we also should clarify, this was not
see.
his list. This was like based on intel of what he thinks it's going to be.
And I can't see Tennessee not playing any. I think Kentucky is what might ruin, us not getting Tennessee, Florida or something, because Kentucky looks at Tennessee.
Tennessee, Florida's not happening. I'm just going to go ahead and tell you. It looks like that one's out.
But Florida losing Tennessee and LSU,
and then Florida gets Oklahoma. Like that's going to be so weird. They're going to get Oklahoma year over year. That's such a weird
I don't
rivalry.
like Oklahoma, Florida at all. Like I think
the Bob Stoops Bowl.
We need the regional rivalry. It might be unfair to A&M or something to give them Texas and Oklahoma, but it's like there's a reason rivals exist. Like regional rivals are so meaningful because it's like Georgia, Florida, like you're on that line. You got that. You share that border. A lot of miles of the same border. It builds the animosity.
Yeah, no one's going to be happy though, right? Like that's the main thing. It's like everyone's going to have gripes, but the way you look at it, and if you explained it and the way they were talking about it, it's like this makes sense too. It's like Tennessee owns Kentucky. Like those games have not been competitive by and large. Like Tennessee in 2020 lost at home to the Kentucky for the first time since like the early 80s. So it's like that's not a competitive rivalry. So if you give Kentucky and Vanderbilt permanent rivals and then Bama is the one, it's like, oh, you get 2 easy ones and 1 tough one. But South Carolina's been back and forth. Like that's been more 50-50, and then you have Bama, which has been more lopsided for Bama.
Vanderbilt better have South Carolina and Kentucky on
I think I saw they would have Auburn, Tennessee, and who was the other one they had? It was maybe Mississippi State, or something. It was something
they do play Ole Miss. That's their locked rival.
Ole Miss was the other one. Yeah.
So I could see them keeping that going. So that's fair. But
the Jefferson Pilot Sports Bowl, that needs to be called the Jefferson Pilot Sports Bowl. Ole Miss, Vanderbilt should be played every year, but you need a Jefferson Pilot Sports trophy. That would be fantastic. And then Bob Stoops
Dave
Bowl
Neal.
for Florida,
Dave Neal's calling the game for sure.
That should be it. I like that. Your guy, Jaheim Singletary, wound up at Arkansas. What are the Hogs getting in Singletary, and how big of a loss is this for Georgia's secondary in 2023, Matt Green?
It's hard to know exactly what they're getting because he really didn't see the field much last year. But, this dude was a 5-star coming out last year. I think Georgia's DB room is it's pretty loaded with what they signed in 2022 class and now in the 2023 class. I think Nyland Green was also in that. Nyland Green might be a candidate to start next year, but also number 6, Dalen Everett. He was also a 5-star in that 2022 class. Singletary and Green, Singletary. I could be wrong about that now that I'm thinking. I'm not sure all 3 of them were in the same class, but Georgia's brought in some loaded cornerback classes last couple of years. So Singletary, I get, and I think I left out Julian Humphrey. I think he was even a big-time recruit in one of those classes. So Georgia's been pretty loaded, and I'm blanking on who they signed in the 2023 class, but I want to say there was a pretty. I'll have to look that up, but Arkansas, man, they're loading up on the portal. I think this is why I think Arkansas. I haven't given up on them. I was wrong about them in 2022. They were definitely my sleeper. I was thinking they were a team that could win 9-10 games, but I haven't given up on them because they're really utilizing the portal. This is now, I think, at least the 3rd guy I can think of they've gotten from Georgia with now I'm blanking on him right after I said it. Matt Landers did come from Toledo, but then ended up at Arkansas. And who's the other one? Singletary and why am I blanking? Latavius Brinney, the defensive back a year ago too. So Sam Pittman got those connections, with Georgia. So always got a soft spot for Arkansas, especially if they have even more Georgia players.
For sure. They got to go to Baton Rouge, to Ole Miss, to Alabama, and to Florida. I don't know. It's gonna be a tough year for the Hogs. Speaking of tough decisions, though, Matt Green, do you think it's smart for Steve Sarkisian to go into the spring with it being an open quarterback battle between Quinn Ewers and Arch Manning?
My first question would be, what does that really even mean? You know what I mean? Like, you're just not going to publicly say he's the starter? Like, or is that change like the reps in practice or something? Or it's like, are you going to do something you were not normally going to do with the first and second string quarterback? Like, you're obviously, the second string quarterback is getting his reps in practice. So maybe you're just going to rotate who's with the ones more than you typically would. I don't know. I think Ewers obviously has a huge edge, but why wouldn't it be a competition? Like every position is basically always up for competition, like if someone's just better in practice every day, like they're going to win the job. So I think Ewers, I think there's a very small chance that Ewers doesn't win the job, but I think it's just kind of, it's a competition like every position is a competition.
Yeah, Tennessee is technically open. They've said that since December, that the spring will be open between Nico and Joe. And I just wonder if that's the nature of the beast when you bring in these big-time players. It's just you have to say it's open to keep everybody happy.
Yeah, Carson Beck got, I would have to say, 95% of the non-Stetson Bennett snaps last season. So, he's obviously the favorite, but I'm sure Kirby Smart is going to go into the offseason and say it's an open competition with all 3 of these guys, because I think you just want to breed competition. And honestly, I mean, in the era of the transfer portal, like it's almost like dangling a carrot. Maybe I really think that's what Nick Saban was doing with Jalen Hurts the year. Like it's the way the media portrays it. It's that no, Jalen Hurts wanted to like stay and win the job back from Tua. It's like maybe that's true, but I also think it's because Saban was kind of uncommitted. Like maybe I don't know who the starter is. Like. We all know who the starter is. It's the guy who just came in and won the national championship. Like that's the guy. But I think he kind of intentionally left it open. Whereas someone like Dabo Swinney, I think, it didn't turn out to hurt him. But if he would have had Kelly Bryant as a backup, that his team would have been better. And I think he did kind of pull like the morally like high ground move of being like, you're not going to start. I don't want to waste your year. You can like transfer somewhere. And it wasn't the best thing for the team. Like the team would have been better if Kelly Bryant was the backup. So, I think there's an element to that like if every guy thinks they might have a shot, then they might not transfer this year.
That's fair. And we'll see. I don't know. I think it's going to happen though. One of these guys is going to surprise and take over. And also Quinn can't go anywhere for a little bit because Quinn's got to graduate if he wants to transfer again. He's already burned his one-time transfer when he came in from Ohio State, so he can't really go anywhere for a little bit.
Last Ewers is a guy, if he blows up, like has like a superstar season this year, he could be gone. Like so he could leave this year. So like I don't think there's much worry about that if you're Arch Manning. Like I almost called him Archie Manning. I feel like I'm not used to talking about him like a player, only as like this mythical prospect we may see one day. But yeah, so who knows what could happen in this day and age? It's like I don't feel like big time players redshirt really. So maybe get some game action and see what he can do.
Well, it's also Peyton obviously started as a freshman, but Eli, his uncle, did not start as a freshman. He got in there a little bit, but did not take over the job full time until
he didn't start like game one as a freshman.
Eli did not. No.
Okay.
So I don't know. That's what I was
Peyton didn't start game one, but he like came in game one. I want to say
Romaro Miller was starting, but then he left the team after 2000. God, that was 2000.
Don't forget Todd Helton over there as well on that QB depth chart.
Goodness gracious, man! That just
Hall of Famer. Hall of Famer Todd Helton. It's a travesty that Todd Helton isn't in the Hall of Fame. This guy's punished for playing his whole career in Colorado. You can't control where you play. It's garbage. Todd Helton should be in the Hall of Fame.
I mean, you're not going to get any arguments from me. VFL, he got honored at Tennessee this past year.
And my guy, Andrew Jones, of course. He's getting there. Each year, I follow this account, Andrew Jones, HOF or something. This guy's like sole purpose. I guess there was like a Larry Walker account that did kind of something similar. This guy's sole purpose is to try to get Andrew Jones in the Hall of Fame. He's constantly posting these stuff, all these things like all these accolades that everyone who did this is a Hall of Famer. And Andrew Jones is one of them. Like all kinds of things like that. But yeah, Andrew Jones, he'll get there one day. And I think Todd Helton, got to put him in there.
Maybe I'm weird. I just don't care about the Hall of Fame for any sport at all. I couldn't care less who makes the Hall, who doesn't. Like it does not matter to me in the slightest. Like I have my own opinions on who should be or who should not, and that's just it. Then I'm good.
Andrew Jones is my guy, especially though. Like that's my favorite all-time baseball player. So
but
it's
not going to change your life if he's in the Hall of Fame.
I think it will. I'll feel more complete if Andrew Jones gets that Hall of Fame. Also, shame on the Braves. Retired every great player from that era got their number retired. Andrew Jones didn't get that 25 retired. It's just not right when I see, who was that fat third baseman had for a little bit, Juan Francisco, all these random guys through the years rocking number 25. It doesn't look right.
Wow.
That's my Andrew Jones spiel.
You're really passionate about Andrew Jones.
He's like a 12-time Gold Glover or something.
I like Andrew
best defensive
Jones.
center fielder of all time.
I mean, are you on his payroll? Like, what's happening over here?
I'm serious though. Like you look at like Ozzie Smith, guys got in the Hall of Fame for just their defense, and Andrew Jones is like the greatest defensive center fielder ever. And I don't even think that's an opinion. I feel like it's a fact. And he had like 400 career home runs.
Look, I love Andrew. You're not like, I'm not the enemy here, Matt Green. I'm not a voter. I'm not the one keeping Andrew Jones out of the hall right now. He'll get there eventually.
I'll let it go. I got a little heated there.
You're fired up about Andrew Jones. I like
he's my guy.
He's also
Don't stop the chop.
There you go. Last thing before we get into our main event, predicting the SEC on CBS games of the week. A few contenders each week that we're going to parse through, we think will be the game of the week for this fall, because we're nearing the end of at least in the SEC variety. It's weird they're going to keep the same song for the Big Ten games. That's going to be jarring. Right. But, Matt Green, I wanted to throw this at you. Did you see what former ESPN president John Skipper said about the ACC and Pac-12?
Oh, yes. I only because you posted the link and I did a little pre-show research.
The Pac-12, he suggested the Pac-12 and the ACC merge. Matt Green, I don't think this is a bad idea. I think when you look at the landscape and where the Pac-12 is sitting right now, where the Big 12 is just chomping at the bit, waiting to take Colorado, waiting to take Arizona, waiting to take Utah, they're just sitting there. Just like, all right, let's see what this TV deal looks like. They're just waiting it out to see what ultimately comes of it. They still don't have one. It's not looking great. The way to do that, we're already moving to a USC and UCLA are in the Big Ten. Like, geography does not matter anymore. Basically, what we're doing is the Netflix of cable television, where it's like we're going to reinvent divisions and conferences because they're going to get so bloated they all split off again in 50 years when we're old. And we're going to have the Pac-12 all over again. And all of them are going to be 12-team conferences, and everything's going to be back. They're just reinventing the super conferences, and then we're going to go back to everybody breaking back up because it's too big.
If only there's a way we could, divide these really big conferences.
That's what I think is going to happen.
I'm not a fan of this conference imperialism. This is what it is. Mm-hmm. Where just all these conferences are just taking their little piece of the West Coast. Like, I just don't get it.
But do you honestly think that's a bad idea to do, though? We own the East Coast and the West Coast, and that's our conference.
I think it's a bad idea. I mean, it's already happening. So UCLA and USC it's done. But I think it's just a terrible idea because it's such a regional sport.
But you could keep the regions. You could keep the ACC region playing each other and the other region playing each other with maybe a couple games mixed in.
I mean, how many teams? So you're saying who are they adding? All of the California schools left and Washington State, Oregon State?
I think Oregon and Washington. I don't know. I guess you'd have to just go ahead and get them all, right? Like if you're going to merge.
I think everyone's calling them the four corners.
Yes.
Like, although those are already going to the Big 12 in this scenario. Mm-hmm. Is that what's happening?
Well,
and
no.
So everyone who's left, you're trying to get, because I mean Utah, Utah's one of those. Yes. Utah, Colorado, Arizona State. Mm. So if they'd make so much sense in the Big 12. I don't know if that'll happen. Like I feel like I want that to happen because I want regional stuff to mean something. But so then in that scenario, there's 6 teams left in the Pac-12. So that would have to be, if a 20-team conference, it would have to be all 6 of those teams left, which is at that point Washington State, Oregon State, Cal, Stanford. So those 6 teams joining the ACC is just like, are you gonna call it like the American Coast Conference so they can still be the ACC? Is that,
you could do that?
The Coast to Coast Conference.
Those are bad branding. I mean, look, the situation is.
That was right off the top of the head, I got these $1 million ideas.
I like that. I am just saying, I don't hate that idea for both conferences, or just like the ACC getting a jump where it's like we're already locked in, and if we want to save this thing, we've got to do something bold, and merging like that keeps the Big 12 at bay, and then you have 4 mega conferences.
So those 6 would put them at 20. The 4 would put the Big 12. The Big 12 is about to be at 12. Is that right? They're going to be They currently have 10. They're going to be at 14 for a year, and then they're going to go to 12. So that would put them at 16, and then the SEC sitting there at 16. The Big Ten is about to be 16.
Mm-hmm.
Does it settle down there?
I think so, right?
Do we, or does everyone need to get to 20?
I don't think you can. Who else are you pulling?
I don't know. I don't know what's happening anymore. It's off the rails.
But that would be funny if the ACC ends up with the most schools. Like they are the ones who end up with 20 schools first. I don't know. The chaos element of this would be hilarious. Like if they really did this.
Because that's how many schools. So that's 16 times 3. What is that? 48. Plus 20 is 68. That's 68 teams. That's basically Power 5. Like that's those that want Power 5 to break off from the rest of Group of 5 schools. Like 68 is about that sweet spot of teams. So I mean, that scenario makes a lot of sense.
Well, we'll see what happens. I think a lot of crazy stuff is going to happen over the next month in conference realignment and the sport. I think we're not done here. But we'll see what ultimately happens. Matt Green, how would you like to lead our main event discussion here tonight of the SEC on CBS games of the week?
Yeah, man, let's do it. How much time we got? You got a lot. This is gonna take a while.
We're gonna do 20 minutes. Can you do this in 20?
So they don't go. You usually don't have one week 1, right? On CBS. I think some of those games may already even be announced. I'm not sure about how many good games we got week 1. Florida at Utah. Is that it? South Carolina, North Carolina, Tennessee, Virginia. Oh, we got LSU, Florida State, but not in Tallahassee because that would be stupid. We're gonna play that one in Orlando because grinds my gears. Now let's go to week 2. So week 2, I think this is an easy one. So what we're doing here, I don't think
week 2 has one either.
I don't think we set this up correctly, but we're predicting the SEC on CBS schedule for the season. And week 2, I think they're definitely going to have one because they're not going to miss out on Texas at Alabama. Like that's like Notre Dame, Georgia.
Was that CBS last year? That was on
But it was
Fox.
at Texas.
Okay.
Like Notre Dame at Georgia, like that was a CBS game for sure.
Was it really? I don't even remember now. I guess so.
I mean, that game, there was like so much hype around that game. It was kind of interesting because neither team ended up being like that great. I mean, Georgia finished, I think, maybe top 7, 8, but wasn't it really a great season. So I think Texas, Alabama is really the only choice there in week 2. Do we have any other good games? I think there's just a lot of out-of-conference stuff. Texas A&M, Miami, Vanderbilt, Wake Forest, which feels like that should be a rivalry. I don't know how many times we've seen that, but Vanderbilt, Wake Forest seems like a rival. But yeah, week 2 is easy. Week 3 is when we have some decisions. I still think week 3 is pretty easy.
I don't think it's easy, by the way. There's back and forth between Georgia and South Carolina and Tennessee, Florida. I think it will be Tennessee, Florida. But
I think it's going to be Tennessee at Florida as well. South Carolina, like only because this has to be so far in advance. Like I just don't think South Carolina necessarily has the expectations. Like Tennessee, Florida is just it's a sexier game, honestly. Like it is Athens, so there's maybe you want to see the defending national champion. This is like your first opportunity to do it, like 3 weeks in. That's kind of the only scenario I could really see because it's like Georgia at South Carolina is a way more interesting game because you're like, okay, maybe the hostile road environment, we could see an upset or something. But yeah, for that reason, like we also got Georgia Tech, Ole Miss, LSU at Mississippi State is that week, Kansas State at Missouri. So we have a couple interesting BYU at Arkansas, but I think Tennessee, Florida is the week 3 CBS game.
Okay. What about week 4, Matt Green?
All right, let's go to week 4. So week 4, who's it not going to be? It is not going to be Kentucky at Vanderbilt. It's not going to be Mississippi State at South Carolina. We're finally getting into the conference schedule now. Auburn, Texas A&M, I feel like that's a decent game. I don't feel like it's going to be that one. I could see it being Arkansas, LSU. The Golden Boot, always entertaining. I feel like I don't ever remember that game being played in September. Always feels like a late November game, but I think I'm gonna have to go Ole Miss at Alabama on this one.
You also didn't mention A&M hosting Auburn. I think that's sneaky, depending on how both.
No,
teams
I mentioned
start.
that one. I don't. Yeah, but I'm not sure about that one. What do you think?
My gut says they'll do Bama, Ole Miss, but Ole Miss never beats Bama. In those
Actually,
games.
I think I take that back because they're going to Bama in week 2. I don't think Ole Miss. Kind of my logic with Georgia, South Carolina. I think Bama at Ole Miss is much more entertaining than Ole Miss.
So you want to
Bama.
burn Arkansas, LSU?
I think I'm going Arkansas, LSU. Yeah.
Okay. I could see that. And I also will just say as the wild card is I would not be surprised if it's Auburn and A&M, depending on how those two teams start.
Yeah, for sure. I think, do they need... I don't think they really have a marquee game, though. Auburn does play Cal. I didn't mention that one.
Also, Auburn will be on. When's Georgia-Auburn? Oh, Georgia-Auburn's the next week. Oh, yeah. No, cancel that out because I already know where Week 5's going. Week 5's Georgia at Auburn. No question for me.
I mean, I think there's some doubt, though, because Auburn... it kind of does depend on if they start this. Like, if they start 4-0, it's kind of a weak 4-0. There's no real
Auburn,
other than
man.
A&M. If they beat A&M, this could even be one where they use an option or something. Because if they beat A&M, oh wait, hold on, I forgot to tell you, week 5. I don't know if you noticed this schedule. That's 7 SEC games right there, sir. You know what 7 SEC games means?
What?
That means we got a doubleheader this week. So this is when you get the SEC night game. And if you look at the candidates to be the night game, I think you're right. Georgia, Auburn does feel like the best. You got Florida at Kentucky has been a good game several years in a row. LSU at Ole Miss, I think, might be the next candidate as far as challenging Georgia, Auburn. But you also got South Carolina at Tennessee. This has become a rivalry in recent years.
That's going to be at noon. Guaranteed. Lock it in. That's a nooner on ESPN. Go ahead and lock that in. We're going to be burning up and just beating South Carolina 63-7. But that will be a nooner. Lock that one in.
So they do they do 2 doubleheaders a year, and the other one is in week 11. And I think one of the doubleheaders will be a noon 3:30 doubleheader, and then one of them will be a 3:30 8 o'clock doubleheader. Looking at the schedule, I think this is going to be the noon 3:30 doubleheader. So I'm going to say Arkansas A&M. I haven't even mentioned that one yet. I'm going to say Arkansas A&M is our noon game in Arlington, and then although LSU Ole Miss, I like that one too. And then Georgia at Auburn is the 3:30 game.
I'm going to say the doubleheader is Arkansas A&M in Arlington and Georgia Auburn.
Okay, so we're in agreement there.
Yeah.
Also, Alabama, Mississippi State. I don't think I mentioned that one.
Yeah, that's not.
So,
Mississippi State hasn't beaten Alabama in, I forgot how long that one's been. It's a long time.
But you got the cowbells. That's
You do have the cowbells.
I think that's part of it. I think as well is trying to go to as many different places as they can. So I think I
don't think you're going to be going to Ole Miss or Mississippi State this year. I'm looking at their schedule right now,
and I don't think they do go to everyone every year by any means. But we'll see what they do there. A lot of options.
The last time
there.
was Georgia. I feel like the last time Mississippi State made that was Georgia, Mississippi State with Dak when they were number 1 in the country.
Georgia didn't play that team. The Dak team?
Or I guess not. It wasn't Dak.
There was a year,
he was quarterback when they were number 1.
Where Kentucky... Yeah, I mean, Dak was the quarterback when they were number 1. There was a year where I think that year they played Kentucky, and I feel like that may have been a CBS game because I want to say both teams were top 10 in 2014. Well,
no, hold on. Then which was but no, Georgia blasted Mississippi State.
You're thinking of that wasn't a CBS game. You're thinking of 2017. They had with Nick Fitzgerald. That was in Athens. Yeah, they came out they had just beaten blasted LSU the week before. Yeah. And I want to say they were top 10. They were definitely ranked ahead of Georgia, but I don't know how highly ranked they were. Yeah. But yeah, they were up there, and yeah, I don't even remember the score.
That was a CBS game, right?
No, I think that was an ESPN night game. That was I want to say that was 31-6 or something.
It was a blowout.
That.
It wasn't close. Yeah.
Yeah, that Dominic Sanders pick, I still see that one.
All right,
that
I
was,
didn't need to get you
that,
down on just the
that
Georgia.
place was. That
Okay.
place was. Oh, that was the. It was 100% ESPN because it was Joe Tessitore on the call. Because first play of the game, Georgia ran the flea flicker.
Yes, I
Terry
remember that.
Godwin for the touchdown. He had that. Guess which dogs are barking first, something like that. So Joe Tess on the call. I literally do remember that.
There you go. Week 6, not as tasty of a slate. I mean, Vanderbilt, Florida for the LOLs on CBS because that's going to probably be a close game. And I think that was really fun last year. That should get consideration. But it's going to be Kentucky, Georgia, and I hate it.
No, it's not going to be Kentucky, Georgia. It's going to be Alabama at A&M.
Do you think so?
I think so. I think this Saban Jimbo stuff writes itself, man. You got to be a part of that. Especially last time they went to A&M. That was the last time, right? 2021.
But even if Georgia and Kentucky are both undefeated, you don't think they're going to do that?
I mean, there's a chance.
They just did it last year.
And wait, this past year?
Yeah.
But it was also like Kentucky was like 8-1 or something. No,
Kentucky will be 5-0. They get
the
Florida
year
at home,
2021. They definitely Kentucky at Georgia was like college game day, and Kentucky was like top 10. So that was a CBS game for sure. I don't remember last year. Was that? Are you sure that was CBS?
Was it not? I thought it was.
I
feel like it was.
You could be right. What was? I can't remember.
It ended at night. I know that. It was cold and it ended when it got dark, but I'm pretty certain it started. It was not a super late night game. Like Mizzou was an ESPN game for y'all.
Oh, that was such a forgettable game. I think that's why I'm forgetting. I remember that Ringo pick where he returned it a good distance. But it was 16-6. Was that the final? That was
something like that. But I'm pretty certain that was CBS.
You might be right about that.
So I don't know. I think they might because I think Kentucky will be 5-0 at this point, and Devin Leary will be cooking. If they're in a bounce back, Kentucky's be top 15, top 17, somewhere around there. Georgia being 1, 2. I wouldn't rule it out.
Ole Miss is just like the wild card every week.
Yeah.
When I'm looking at this, because I'm like Lane Kiffin and they're like so sexy and everything. Like I feel like they're just like a flashy team that gets headlines, and I just never know what to expect from them. So if they're 6-0. 5-1, some of these games could definitely be the CBS game, but if they're 3-3, then they probably won't be. So, Arkansas at Ole Miss that week, I think is a possibility. I think.
Well, can I tell you why I don't?
LSU at Missouri beat them last time they came to Columbia, but Alabama A&M I think is definitely the winner here.
Well, here's why I don't think. Another reason I don't think it's gonna be Alabama A&M because I think A&M and Tennessee the following week is gonna be CBS. I think that's the 3:30 game. Is A&M coming to Tennessee for the first time as an SEC member? Like the two biggest stadiums colliding in the conference.
A matchup you don't get a lot.
No,
sure.
I think that's the one. I think Tennessee gets a bone here because Tennessee has not gotten one to this point, unless they get Florida. They might get Tennessee. I guess they could get Florida, but I think they come back for this one. I think this is number 2. I think that you get Tennessee. And
this is a week of all SEC games, but there's only 6 games. You got a couple of bye weeks in there. But Arkansas, Alabama is also a candidate because I think Arkansas, they could be looking at a 5-1 start or something potentially to the year. 4-2 or something like that. So I don't know. A&M, I think you're right. So that could potentially affect some of those week 5 and week 6 matchups. Kind of maybe saving A&M for that Tennessee game because I think that is an interesting one. But, I mean, they'll put someone on back-to-back weeks if it's the best game. Like, it's Auburn LSU is another one. Like, that's just a good traditional rivalry.
They've been on it a bunch. They've gotten it a bunch of times. We've grown up with that game on CBS a bunch.
That's fair. And that's some of my favorite childhood memories are just Auburn LSU. Those just had some great college football games.
Kirby was
Courtney Taylor, was he the one on that 04 undefeated team? They scored with like a minute left. It was like 10-9, I want to say. Was that Junior Rose Green? Junior Rose Green, I think, had a pick to seal that one. I don't know. You definitely. This was like I'm talking when I was like 14 years old.
No. I'm saying we went back and watched in our review. Like we went back in time. We did a review of an Auburn LSU game on the pod a couple years ago, and we rewatched one of them. And I don't remember which one it was, but it might have been 04.
I can't even remember, but that is a memorable game and to me. And then there's the one they used to play, ESPN Classic, super underrated channel. I hate that ESPN Classic is just gone. Maybe there wasn't enough people that just sit down and watch classic games, but there's that one game from like the early 90s, I think, where Auburn had like 3 straight pick sixes in like the fourth quarter. Like it was something like the dude threw like 5 interceptions for LSU like in the fourth quarter alone. It was just one of the most unreal things. Announcer's losing his mind, just like Auburn intercepted it again. Like it was just insane. But Auburn LSU is just a classic. But you're right in terms of A&M Tennessee's a novelty, and assuming A&M could be looking at 2-4 come week 7, so that's not necessarily a guarantee. You also got Florida at South Carolina in there, but I don't see that one happening. But yeah, so we'll see. If I had to make a pick, I think Arkansas, Alabama. I think Arkansas is gonna be.
That's 3 Alabama SEC on CBS games. We're not even halfway done with the schedule.
What was the second one?
You had Alabama, Ole Miss, and
I changed that one. I changed that one to Arkansas, LSU because so I think that would just be the second one.
Okay.
They love the Crimson Tide.
Well, we still have Auburn, Alabama too, Matt Green. We still have Auburn, Alabama on this list.
That's true. Alabama, LSU too. So that could definitely that's a good point. So I think if there's any chance to put, unless it's just clearly the best game, if it's 6-0 Arkansas and 6-0 Alabama, there's no question. But I think if it's some toss-up, I think you see them go. If it's a good game, Tennessee A&M is the one they want to go. But that's relying on both of those teams being really good. Are we sure? What is Tennessee's record?
All right, that's enough.
Come week
all right,
7.
week 7, week 6. Where are we going next, Matt Green? Week 6.
Speaking of Tennessee's record, no, that was week 7. So we're going to week 8.
Week 8, yeah. Excuse me.
This is one of the guarantees on the schedule. Tennessee at Alabama.
Yes.
So I guess every week I do want to give Alabama the game because I've tried to give it to them like 4 times now. So Tennessee, Alabama is definitely going to be the week 8 game. We also have Mississippi State at Arkansas, Ole Miss at Auburn. The Battle of Columbia, which will be a solid 7:30 SEC network game. South Carolina at Missouri. Shoot, at Missouri, it might start at like 9 o'clock. I'm not even sure. Yeah. But
that's easy.
So I think that's an easy one.
Week 9 is also
Tennessee,
pretty easy.
Alabama. Week 9, we're probably going to hear of this one announced like later this week, honestly. Like in March whenever they announce the schedule. Georgia, Florida will be 3:30 on CBS. Also got Mississippi State. And one thing I've noticed through the years is Georgia, Florida seems to be a common bye week, and it seems to just be like a really crappy SEC slate around the Georgia, Florida game for whatever reason. So seeing a lot like only conference games this week and almost a full slate, like it's a better week in the SEC than I think typically Georgia, Florida is. And hopefully we're going to get rid of these late season cupcake games altogether. It's terrible. It's terrible ammunition for all the other conferences that hate on the SEC. They're like, oh, we're playing Michigan State this week. You guys are playing the Citadel? Oh, that's a really hard schedule. And they ignore all the other difficult games that you played. So just get those out of the way at the start of the season.
Why are you calling out Sonny Dykes? You beat him 65-7. Who cares?
I'm calling out Sonny Dykes?
Yeah, remember he was complaining about Georgia and the SEC schedule where they played the cupcakes. Remember all the Georgia fans?
But I'm saying I think it's a legitimate criticism. So it's like take that ammunition away from your opponent. You know what I'm saying? It's like make this something they can't criticize you for. Because the schedule is a gauntlet. It's like just show that it gets tougher down the stretch. I think that's one problem I've had with Georgia's schedule through the years. It's like so many years Georgia Tech isn't good. It's like you play Auburn the first week of November and then you play Kentucky Tech and your season's over. Some UMass or something in there in November and your season's over. It's like you want to build to the end of the season and get better as the season goes on. And like this year, we'll get there because will get our wish with this schedule, but we will get there. So stay tuned.
There you go.
But yeah, also on Florida Georgia week, Georgia Florida week, I should say. Can't believe I just said the other order. Mississippi State at Auburn, Tennessee at Kentucky, Vanderbilt at Ole Miss, and South Carolina at A&M. So a solid week in week 9, October 28th. Then we go to week 10, and it's almost a full slate, but we still got a couple cupcakes in there in November. You know, trying to get those guys out of there. But LSU at Alabama, I think is definitely the obvious favorite, just kind of right off the bat. Obviously, I try to give it to Alabama every week. So,
but they did LSU Bama on ESPN at night last year in the Bayou. I don't know. I think you could. It's not a great slate, so it's like they're asking for that game. But like if you told me it was A&M at Ole Miss, that wouldn't surprise me.
I think that's really the only other one in my opinion. And it's like Missouri at Georgia isn't an option.
That's going to be a night game. I think that game's only at night.
Arkansas,
am I crazy, or is that game always at night? Georgia, Missouri. That's always a night game.
At Missouri is definitely always at night, except for I think maybe one other game. But yeah, I honestly at Georgia it seems like it's typically a night game too. So that's definitely got 8 o'clock SEC Network written on it. Although they don't do night games in Athens anymore, so who knows? Who knows that'll really happen? But Arkansas at Florida is also kind of that novelty with A&M, Tennessee, you know, one of these cross-divisional games you don't get very often. But the Felipe Franks Bowl, he also had – that's the game that Felipe Franks had that long run when they rocked the Gator uniforms, I want to say. So multiple Felipe Franks references to this game. But I think Florida and Arkansas, you know, depending on what kind of seasons they're having, I think that's a possibility. But LSU, Alabama, I think is the obvious choice there.
For sure. We're down to week 11, week 12, and week 13, Matt Green.
Week 11. You see what I see on this schedule, sir?
I don't know. Week 11.
That's a full slate of SEC football games, sir. That's 7 SEC football games. That means we got another doubleheader here.
No, that's week 12.
11. No, this is it right here, week 11.
Saturday,
November 11th.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, yeah, never mind. My bad.
So we got a full slate. Ole Miss at Georgia. That seems like a good one. Lane Kiffin versus Kirby Smart. Solid little storyline there. A lot depends on what kind of season Ole Miss is having. If Ole Miss is 6-2, well, what? That's week 11. If they're like 7-2, you know, something like that, it's 8-2. If Ole Miss is having a good season, and assuming Georgia is having another good season, I think that's definitely a possibility. Florida at LSU, I think, is a possibility. But, you know, late in the season, depending on what kind of team Florida is, they could be kind of irrelevant. That could be a number 10 versus an unranked team at that point in the year. You also got Auburn at Arkansas, Mississippi State at A&M. I mean, what else? Like the Bear Bryant Bowl, Alabama at Kentucky. Could that they're going to have to do a doubleheader.
There's no way they're doing Bama at Kentucky, is it?
No, I don't
they have
think
to do a doubleheader, so I'm going to say my gut says Georgia, Ole Miss, and Arkansas, Auburn.
See, I think they're going to go Ole Miss at Georgia at 3:30.
Maybe LSU and Florida.
Florida at LSU,
Yeah.
Death Valley at night. I think that's what they'll do, because that seems like the best matchup here. But, you know, if Florida's 5-5 at this point in the season, you know, we could see a different story.
Yeah, that would not surprise me. Week 12, Matt Green.
Week
Final
12
2 here.
is just a disgusting sight, sir. We got UT Chattanooga at Bama, FIU at Arkansas, New Mexico State at Auburn, Georgia State at LSU, UL Monroe at Ole Miss, Southern Miss at Mississippi State, Abilene Christian at Texas A&M. Just an awful slate. November 18th, week before Thanksgiving. We got 3 conference games that week. I think this one is easy. Georgia at Tennessee, I think, is the obvious one. This game could decide the SEC East.
The line already opened up at like 7.5. It's pretty tasty out of the gate here.
Oh yeah, man. I'm gonna jump on that for sure. Georgia's gonna beat
For the
them by
Vols?
like 3 touchdowns.
Oh, zero chance. Zero chance.
Yeah, I need to put some bets in. Last time I put a bet on Georgia to win the national championship, they won the national championship. So I need to get back on that. It might not be that fun of a number anymore, but Florida at Missouri is that week. Kentucky at South Carolina are the other two, but
Yeah,
I think
it's
pretty
Georgia,
easy
Tennessee.
one. With Georgia, Tennessee, and then the last week of the season, we got
Auburn, Bama.
Auburn, Alabama at Auburn, I should say. So Alabama can't be on here like 7 times, so they're gonna have to find some different teams to put on, but they definitely have a tough schedule because they have a lot of candidates to be the SEC game of the week. So also that week, you're going to have, I don't think it's ever CBS on because Thanksgiving they do NFL stuff. So Ole Miss, Mississippi State's usually an ESPN night game. Missouri at Arkansas is usually a CBS game on that Friday, although it's saying that on Saturday. I wonder, is that schedule right? Because Missouri, Arkansas has been Friday the last few years, but was Florida State on Friday this past year?
Yes, it was. I know it was because I came home and watched it with my folks when I was back in Atlanta.
Yeah, I enjoyed that for sure. So, and then we got, so Florida State at Florida could be a candidate, because they can carry a CBS game, but most likely Alabama at Auburn is going to be the game. So not Clemson, South Carolina, not A&M, LSU, not Vanderbilt, Tennessee, or Kentucky, Louisville. Solid rivalry week, though.
Yeah, that was fun.
That was good stuff. And then the Saturday, December 2nd, the SEC championship will be most likely 4 o'clock.
The Vols and the Bayou Bengals
on CBS. We shall see, sir. No. Is that 2007?
Yeah,
SEC
with Eric
championship. Is that the only time that's been
the?
We saw Georgia LSU 5 times in the SEC championship. That's I think that might be the most. I think Florida Alabama is still the most common matchup, but Georgia LSU is close second.
There you go. All right, Matt Green. Well, that was fun. Glad we were able to do that. A lot of college football stuff, and by the time we record on Sunday, the Pac-12 might be no more. The ACC might have gobbled them up. Who knows where college football will be in 5 days? And new rules might be instituted. We'll see. But until
they passed those rules, right? That's official.
Well, I'm saying more rules might pop up.
Oh, more rules.
That's just what they did now.
I might have to add a rule. I know you're trying to sign us off this podcast right now, but you saw the XFL kickoff?
Mm-hmm.
Big fan of the XFL kickoff formation. If they're worried about the running full speed collisions, that's the way to do it because we cannot get rid of kickoffs. What are we gonna have throw-offs? What is this, backyard football? We can't do that.
There you go. Matt Green, always a pleasure, and I will talk to you Sunday.